Cambrian mollusk-like animals. Yes, please. Here is Wawaxia. So these are known from the Burgess Shale, and since then they've actually been found in a variety of locations. There are Chinese ones, you find them around Chengjiang. And the beautiful thing is that in some of these, preserved right up here, so this would have been the head end, look at these. Look at that little rake. That is probably a radula, what remains of it. And so Wawaxia, with these large hollow sclerites that would have maybe some of the mantle sticking up inside of them, had a radula, which makes them probably at least on their way to being one of these guys. Yeah, proper mollusk. And here is some reconstruction of Halkieria, and it's nice to see it in color. And so there you've got the two shells that have grown up by accretion. You've got these sort of hollow little spines that are covering the side. You've got multiple different types of these and different curvatures of each of these, many of which would at different points have been given their own scientific names because we didn't know what to do with it. And the idea is that at this end, they would have had a little sort of probe-like proboscis, which may have contained a little tiny radula. And so view these as like polyplacophora, like the chitons, but instead of having the front, back, and 6 middles, they have a front, back, and several thousand pieces in the middle and on the edge. But I think you can see the general resemblance of these. Here is a different Halkierid. And so this one doesn't have any of the other shell parts. This one's going to be covered in some little hairs. They were probably chitinous, although these are from Fezuata. It's a place in Morocco, or a formation, where you get wonderful fossils from the very early Ordovician. Good soft tissue preservation, but it's once again going to be a cast in a variety of minerals, mostly seem to be iron minerals, if I remember correctly. And so this one has one shell at the top, but if you were to zoom in on this little trackway right here, where I think somebody has excavated a little bit, what you would see is that it's got, look at that, little tiny scars. And here's another individual. Every one of these that people have looked into has what appears to be a long radula. And so this is the type of radula you would get on a chiton. And if chitons have it, and monoplacophorans have it, and gastropods have it, then you can make a pretty good case for saying that this is an ancestral feature. That the radula is probably an early molluscan crown group feature that seems to be preserved in those groups in particular, but is also present in, Mopalia, and Mopalia is this orange guy, which is, we think, related to this. All right, so here are some of these early mollusk-like animals. So the idea is that Wawaxia is its own thing with these inflatable sort of spines everywhere, generally soft-bodied, preserved either mainly or exclusively in the Burgess Shale. And then you've got some of your others. This one's from Sirius Passet, kind of early mid-Cambrian. This one is from Morocco. It's actually an Ordovician one, but it looks as though this may be before the animal has evolved all those little spiny plates, and it's only got hairs there, or it may be that it has gone on and lost them. This is a character-based phylogeny. And then the idea is that these would all give rise to polyplacophorans potentially. And also by losing some of these hard parts, as in the soft ones, you could then sort of back mutate or change yourself to a shellless version, which are going to be like the aplacophorans, like Cotofoveata, for example. And the idea is that everything that grows up and has a shell on it, including bivalves and gastropods, would then be later branches which have come off from this, but the shells are basically analogs of these front and back shells that you would get. If you had a creature like this and you folded it in half, what you'd have would be a very protected creature, but with one big shell on either side. And so there's a line of thinking that this may be the origin of where bivalves come from. And it wouldn't have to be like an individual that's folding its body. It could be as simple as a change during one of their metamorphoses as they are growing up. So, yeah. Here is a modern polyplacophoran, and look at those shells. Aren't those fantastic? But you can see that the creature inside there really resembles what we're reconstructing for a early gastropod or a Kimberella, or probably what is on the underside of creatures like this. We have nice reconstructions of the hard side now that was on the top. As far as I'm aware, we haven't found one that's flipped over where you can really see the soft tissue that was under it very well. And showing here's a true limpet here. But even the true limpets, which just look like they have a little sort of a circus tent shell, sometimes with a hole in the center, they will have that sort of early shell. Here's their first little protoconch, original shell, and then they'll grow from there. And look at that, it's kind of like it's curving. It's almost doing what a snail would do. And here are the radula zoomed in to see the structure of those. All right, here's another phylogeny. This is the Cambrian single-valved mollusks, and this would put some of those Euchalcynellids and Halcynellids down here. They're their early branch, but they're on their own. You've got some that are swimming. Here's your Halcynellids that are over here. You've got here, these are pelagic ones that are over here. And it's possible that those one or more of these curved, somewhat snail-like groups eventually evolves into actual gastropods, or into something that eventually evolves into actual gastropods. Yeah, interesting to speculate. Going back to Wiwaxia, this is like our early branch in all the phylogenies, and look at the arrangement of those little plates. So there's presumably a radula under there, but look how well armored this is. And in this case, we do actually have dissections that will show the bottom of these Wiwaxias. And yeah, they are armored top and bottom and sides. So, primitive relative of mollusks, almost likely. Probably a relative of those halkyrids. But yeah, things get real murky when you're down in the crown group. Here is one of those bivalve-like organisms. Now, this one is mainly known from internal molds, which is why that's kind of unfortunate. But these are from the early Cambrian, where you have this record of bivalve mollusks. So imagine a halkyrid that's folded in half with a shell on top, shell on the bottom, and yeah, the same sort of self in the middle. Imagine this thing moving away from sort of a grazing lifestyle and more toward a filtering lifestyle, because the filtering is always there. The potential is always there, because that's how all of these mollusks are going to get air onto their gills, is by, well, get oxygen onto their gills. It's by pulling water through. So they have to have a pumping mechanism. And the degree to which they're able to sample food from that is going to vary with taxa. But yeah, that's not such a big change to make. But yeah, these are some of the ones that look like bivalves, and then after the lower Cambrian, these things disappear for a long time, and then bivalves come back and they actually look pretty different. And so we cannot say for sure that these are actually bivalve relatives. Shown here, these are showing that, and this is a fairly modern 2020, fairly good phylogenetic analysis, robust, It's been done in different ways, and you see you get very similar results each way. So all the green ones are going to be your cephalopods. And so you see they're kind of their own branch over here. But some of the early cephalopods may not have had shells or hard parts. And so, unless you have exceptional preservation, it may be difficult to recognize them, or they may be like a ghost taxa. Like they were there, but they didn't leave a good fossil record because they were mostly soft. Actual gastropods, once again, end up as a fairly recent branch on the tree. Yeah, crazy as that is. And a sister group to bivalves. And it's weird to think that bivalves and gastropods end up the closest because snails and two valve shells, snails with their one valve, those do not seem very similar. And yet, genetically, phylogenetically, it looks like they're pretty close. So, yeah, it's interesting. Scaphopods, these are our little tusk shells, our little hollow elephant tusks. See, they're a little more primitive, but not as primitive. Like the branch that leads to cephalopods has already gone by the time they pop up on all these trees. And then down here at the bottom, you're going to get the things with no shells, Caudofoveata and Solanogastres. You're going to get the things with one shell and multiple organs, which are your monoplacophorans, which are right here. That's what this paper was about as a very early branch in the group. And you're going to get your polyplacophorans, which are things like the chitons. And the relative positions of these are going to depend very strongly on where you put the root of that tree. Because I don't know if you've seen this, but you can reroot these trees depending on where their most recent common ancestor comes in. So if it comes in there, this is the tree that you would get. But if that branch actually comes in and it joins right here instead of right here, then that would put your monoplacophorans as the most primitive group, and these others as a little bit more derived. It would rearrange the tree a bit. Either way, gastropods are going to end up fairly new and sister group to bivalves. There's not really a lot we can do about that. That's just a fact, and all tied up in there with scaphopods. So, yeah. There you go, molluscan phylogeny. Okay, and that is going to be the end of our mollusk lecture. So I hope you got a lot out of this. And the test questions are going to be things like, what's a Wiwaxia? Why do we think something like this is going to be a mollusk? And the answer is that under this Wiwaxia, this most primitive mollusk-like thing, there have been radula discovered. Little rasping teeth. And that's just like what you get up here. Yeah. In modern gastropods and monoplacophorans, modern ones. Yeah, a little rasping radula. And then you've got your halkyrids that have the big shell front and back and also all extra armoring around the side. So asking you what one of those is, put these things onto a phylogenetic tree as best you can. Comment on how they work. Which ones were scrapers, things that probably had a radula, like right up here. I think all the ones in this section are scrapers until we get to these. Those are scrapers, yeah. Those are scrapers, and those are mostly scrapers till we get here. And when we get here, these are probably filter feeders. And both of those are modes of existence that you find in the mollusks, yeah. And then cephalopods are their own thing. Big, smart predators. Really cool. They would make a very good project, I would say. So I think that's plenty for here. Thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed mollusks. I think they're fascinating. I wish we had more time to cover more of them because they're weird, but we've got so many strange things to cover in this class. Thanks very much.